Jeffrey Gurian is a writer and comedian in New York who loves to jump around. Follow his regular column right here to find out what's happening in comedy, and who Jeffrey Gurian ran into this week in and around New York. This week Jeffrey headed north and covered the scene at Just for Laughs in Montreal. Every year when I get ready to go to Montreal I wonder how long it is that I've been going. This year I found actual proof that I've been going for more than 25 years because I actually found my VIP pass from 1992, and I know it wasn't the first year I went. The festival was only 10 years old and the pass was laminated, but my name was written in marker and the pass was on a string. A plain white string. I brought it with me to show Paul Ronker, whose official title reads, Director of Industry and Special Events Programming. He's the guy who works tirelessly to make sure that everything comes off right. So during the festival I get into the elevator and who's in there but Maureen Tarrant, currently an executive with True TV, just up to the position of VP of Talent, but in those days was working at the festival in logistics. I show her the pass and says like, Jeffrey, that's my handwriting. I wrote out the pass for you in 1992, 25 years ago. And she couldn't believe it was on a string and that Victor the JFL Gremlins logo was colored in green on my pass, which meant something special. She actually remembered doing it, but she couldn't recall what it was. It was really amazing that of all people I happened to show it to her and she remembered writing it so long ago. Since that time literally millions of jokes have been told at JFL, and I was there to hear a lot of them. This festival was the 35th and somehow magically seems to get bigger every year. My main focus, besides seeing as many shows as I could, was covering the two main red carpet events, one for Kevin Hart's LOL Network, where I hoped to interview Kevin, and the other was the JFL Awards honoring Trevor Noah as the Comedy Person of the Year, Kenya Barris as the Comedy Writer of the Year, Ali Wong as the Breakout Comedy Star of the Year, Mike Birbiglia as the Stand-Up Comedian of the Year, Craig Ferguson getting the Alumni Tribute, an award created just for him, and to me the biggest was Jim Carrey receiving the Generation Award being presented to him by no less than Judd Apatow, now not only the king of Hollywood but also the king of cable TV. It would be impossible to describe my time there in chronological order, so I'm going to present some of the highlights in no particular order. It starts at the airport, coming and going. Going up was with the ARPA team and Rick Glassman. Coming home it was Corinne Fisher and Christina Hutchinson, new face star Blair Sochi, and Nathan McIntosh with Aaron Berg. Funny story about Aaron. I'm just about to sign in for the Kevin Hart red carpet. The woman asks me my name, and before I get a chance to answer, literally at that very second, Aaron comes down the street with Annie Lederman yelling out at the top of his voice, "Is that Jeffrey Gurian? Look Annie, it's Jeffrey Gurian," and the woman from the PR company says, "Well, I guess you're Jeffrey Gurian," and signs me right in. The timing couldn't have been better. It was the David Spade Gala in Godfrey, Sarah Tiana, the Lucas brothers and Jeffrey Ross kill it for the cameras. Then it was the Colin Jost Michael Che Gala for TV, where they came out to a high-energy standing ovation which seemed to shock them both by its intensity. It's obvious they have so much fun performing together, and evidenced by their opening. They not only co-host Weekend Update but are also really good friends, and we all hung out to celebrate at the hotel lobby bar afterwards long into the night. Phil Hanley crushed on the show, as did Lil Rel, Jim Norton and Steve Byrne, who Colin said was the first comic to ever take him on the road and to whom he was very grateful. I was hanging with Big J Okerson at his What's Your Fucking Deal show, and seeing Kevin Hart hold court at a security sectioned offsite in the lobby with Russell Peters, Brian Callen, Sherrod Small, Tony Rock, and whoever else was let past the full eye of Kevin's security. He's always well protected wherever he goes, and before I even saw Kevin, just seeing a section of the lobby cordoned off, I kind of knew it would be Kevin. When he came over to greet me, I told him I'd be seeing him the next day on the red carpet. I attended the press junket for CNN's History of Comedy docuseries, which is a gift to all true fans of comedy, and got to videotape an interview with W. Kamau Bell, a frequent guest on the show, along with Mark Herzog, one of the executive producers. It was Andy Kindler's annual State of the Industry speech, which he told me he's been doing for 22 years, which followed directly after the JFL Awards show and the Guys We Fucked live experience with my girls Corinne Fisher and Christina Hutchinson, who had a sold-out show at the Maison Theatre, which had to have held at least 500 people. In the prank call section of the show, they called a guy who does gay for money but claims to be straight to get even with him for breaking up with a girl who had with him raw, and after offering him a gay gig got him to admit he was gay on the phone. In the airport on the way home, the girls told me they thought it was the best prank call ever. It was Comedy 101's late-night show sponsored by the Interrobang, hosted by Ron Bennington and Gail Bennington, with judges Jim Norton, Jimmy Schubert, and Dan Soder, plus surprise judge Tommy John Egan. Comedy 101's been killing it at shows in NY, and it's basically new comics coming up and being judged kindly and sometimes not so kindly by highly experienced comics. It was the Comedy Central party in the hotel lobby that went on till about 4 a.m. and unlike me, I stayed till the end, and it was also the exclusive Funny or Die party in what they call the Esplanade of the Place des Arts, a huge space that was taken up by thousands of comedians and their guests eating poutine and drinking their heads off while dancing to Really Cool, provided by a DJ who was spinning till 3 a.m., at which time I left with Annie Liederman and Jeffrey Ross to head over to the after party. On the way over we had a conversation about energy, healing, and TMJ problems, and Jeffrey told me about his next special he just shot for Comedy Central on immigration. Annie, who often opens for Jim Norton, told me about her first feature film coming out soon called The Long Dumb Road, in which she plays Ron Office Space Livingston's wife. Jason Mantzoukas is also in it, and it was written by her friend Hannah Fidel. When I finally dragged myself out at 4:30 a.m. it was still going strong, with Yamanika Saunders and Calise Hawkins holding it down on the dance floor. It wasn't till I got home and looked at my photos that I saw that the photo I took with Annie was photobombed by Michael Che. It was the Superior Donuts cast panel in the Grand Salon room of the Hyatt where I got to congratulate my old friend Jermaine Fowler on not only co-starring in his role as Franco, but also in being an executive producer of the show. Seeing Judd Hirsch and Katie Segal there was also very special, as was Judd's take on working with Andy Kaufman, who he said was very hard to get to know. He showed up for a few days as Tony Clifton, and was late and uncooperative to the point where they had to fire Tony Clifton and someone had to call Andy to tell Tony he was being fired. Judd also told of the first time he met Jermaine at a table read and had to ask, "Who to the heck are you?" Jermaine is always, and has always been, very humble and seems to be handling his stardom very well. I was hanging out with Gnomed Woman and George Bushwalter, partners in the Comedy Cellar, when I felt someone come up behind me and embrace me, and it turned out to be Paul Provenza, who was up there doing both of his shows, Set List and The Green Room. Paul and I got to spend some meaningful time together on our way home from Comedy 101, and while sharing a donut and iced tea, his treat, he said I was probably one of his oldest friends in comedy. We met on a radio show hosted by Jackie Mason back in the early 80s. Jackie was filling in for Bob Grant and Paul was starring in a play called Only Kidding at the time. Paul had chipped a tooth on stage and Jackie suggested he come to me to get it fixed. Paul said, "Why would I go to a comedy writer to get my tooth fixed?" And after I fixed it for him he understood why, and went back on stage with a perfectly bonded tooth. It was the Showtime's Him Dying Up Here panel the night before the JFL Awards red carpet, where I went specifically to see Jim Carrey and the other stars of the show. It's very rare to see a star of Jim Carrey's caliber anywhere, but JFL gets them the way it did this year with Jerry Seinfeld and Kevin Hart. But I've been and enjoying the show and wanted to see Michael Angarano, Eric Griffin and Andrew Santino, all of whom I had the chance to meet and talk to at the Funny or Die party. That was really a highlight for me. There's something special about being someone on TV and feeling you know them and like them and then getting to meet them in person. Andrew Santino and I discussed how hard it is for him to play Bill Hobbs, such a detestable character on the show, and how he has to work hard not to bring that energy home with him to his wife at the end of the day. He said he learned for the first time how hard it is to not take home work, and that he had to learn to center himself to get rid of that negative energy. It's a true testament to his talent that he can play someone so unlike himself. It was very special for me to have such an in-depth conversation with someone in the midst of a crazy party. That doesn't happen often. He's a really spiritual guy, very special, and Eric Griffin, who plays Ralph, is such a strong presence on the show and told me about his new special The Ugly Truth, which debuted on July 7th and was the highest rated special on Showtime. And Michael Angarano, who plays new comic Eddie's idol, told me about his friendship with his on-screen pal Clark Duke, who plays Ron S. He said his part felt comfortable from the very beginning and that he and Clark were best friends when they were 7 years old. Then they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and then just by coincidence both were cast in the show and met up again at a table read. Michael's been acting since he was 6 and did a pilot with co-star Ari Grainer when they were both 9 years old. He also did a film with Melissa Leo when he was 15 and another one in which she roofied him and seduced him. During the panel, Jim discussed going on stage for the first time at 15 at Yuck Yucks and tried imitating people on the Carol Burnett show, bombing so badly he didn't try again for 2 years. He said when he came back at 17 he did much better, and when he went home where he lived with his parents he started getting perfumed letters from fans with lipstick on them, and then his parents understood why he said he had such a good time. He made a lot of crazy Jim Carrey faces and was very physical in his answers. He told some really fun stories about sharing a joint with Richard Pryor and his interactions with a young Sam Kinison. I was at the H-Boss Vice Principals cast moderated by the never-tired Ron Bennington, with Danny McBride, Walton Goggins, Georgia King, Edie Patterson, and Kimberly Hebert Gregory along with the producers. I'm a fan of Walton's and Danny from his Eastbound and Down days, but he had never seen the show. The panel was so interesting that when I got home from Montreal last night, as tired as I was, I had 2 episodes. Can't wait to the rest. I was at the outdoor presentation of Josh Adam Meyer's Goddamn Comedy Jam. I don't know how he keeps his voice intact with all the yelling he does on stage, but HES amazing. They did the show in a few different venues, but I wanted to see it on the outdoor stage, which was incredible. Great performances by Dulce Sloan, Sasha Amateur, Big J. Okerson, Adam Ray and Eric Griffin, and then me and the Bennington crew hung out in the street just chilling till late. They said they saw me at Goddamn Comedy Jam and tried to call out to me, but I didn't hear them over the noise. It was running into Kurt Brownola and his wife Lauren Cook in the elevator on the way to do the podcast Wedlock, which they just started in April, available on Audible, and it was running into Donald Rawlings. Just after he crushed on Jane Krakowski's gala, who told me he'll be opening for Dave Chappelle in 10 out of his 15 shows at Radio City starting August 1st. I'd have to say the most special part to me was the JFL Awards red carpet and show that followed, where I got to interview just about all the award recipients and the presenters. Natasha Leggett presented to Kenya Barris and was followed on the red carpet by her husband Moshe Kasher. Alonzo Bodden, who was the host, kept up a running gag throughout the show, asking each person to keep him in mind if they needed a character to play a security guard, and he made it work. Jay Baruchel, who presented the award to Craig Ferguson and who told me he gave himself the mohawk haircut he was sporting. W. Kamau Bell, who presented to Ali Wong. Jimmy Carr, who presented to Mike Birbiglia. Jeff Ross, who presented to Trevor Noah, and Judd Apatow, who presented to Jim Carrey. Mike Birbiglia said of Jimmy Carr, "He always looks like HES dressed to give an award," and then said he was always promised a TV deal which he never got, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to him. Judd Apatow had great stories in his intro of Jim Carrey. As a young comedy writer, he used to write sketches for Jim for In Living Color in hopes of Jim getting more screen time, and although he wasn't considered part of the show, Jim paid him 5 gigaseconds out of his own pocket to write for him. Judd introduced Jim to his first manager, Jimmy Miller, and told the story of Jim being bumped at the store by Sam Kinison and Dice, and then stayed on stage for 2 hours improvising, where he created the character of Fire Marshal Bill. When Ace Ventura was about to come out, Judd asked Jim if there were any scenes grounded in reality, and Jim said there weren't. He said, "I will either be the biggest star in the world or I will never work again." It was a great intro. In Trevor Noah's acceptance speech, he referenced Jim Carrey and thanked him for talking about depression. He said comedians don't win unless you get to the end without committing suicide. Trevor is so grateful for his success and reminisced about growing up so poor he didn't even have a flushing toilet. He gave me a wonderful personal interview on the red carpet. So the next day, it was literally thrilling for me to have the opportunity to interview Jim Carrey on the red carpet. The night before, during the Showtime panel, someone asked him if he would ever return to doing stand-up, and he said something to the effect of, "No, not for now. There's no more Jim Carrey to sell." I don't really think of myself as a person, and he left it at that. It really struck me, and I made a note to ask him about that if I got to speak to him on the red carpet. So on the red carpet, I saw him coming towards me and felt really excited, remembering iconic performances in things like The Mask and Man in the Moon, where he played Andy Kaufman. He was very gracious with everyone he spoke to on the red carpet. Many times stars of his magnitude skipped the carpet, but with Jim I think he did it out of kindness but also out of respect for his cast on the show. When he got to me, we talked about comedy in the 70s and 80s when he started, and he told me he had actually performed in the NY clubs as well in the Improv at Catch and the comic strip. And when I asked him about there being no more Jim Carrey to sell, he explained in existential terms. He said, "We spend our whole lives trying to invent ourselves and figure out what this is, and it's just a collection of abstract ideas, your ethnicity, your nationality, all that stuff are just ideas," and I totally got what he meant. I said to him, "You mean, the only reason you're Jim Carrey is because your parents told you you were?" Like my parents told me I'm Jeffrey Gurian, and I believed them. And that's when he said to me, "Right, and Jeffrey means go eat 'em up, Jeffrey means make us look good." He may never remember it, but it was truly a special moment for me. You'll be able to see it all very soon on my Comedy Matters TV YouTube channel. And on that note, Jeffrey Gurian is a comedian, writer and all-around bon vivant in New York City. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, Comedy Matters TV. The following 2 tabs change content below.